Hey Film Boss, welcome back to Film Feature 43. Today we're going to do another 43 Facts video, this time wrapping up the first half of the Harry Potter series with Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Then I'm going to do a few fan request videos, and then finish up the Harry Potter series. So, without further ado, let's get into talking about the facts. Prisoner of Azkaban's director, Alfonso Cuarón, was offered the role to direct Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, but he turned it down because he was still working on Prisoner of Azkaban, so the role was given to Mike Newell, who was given $1 million to direct the film. And to put that in perspective, Chris Columbus was given $10 million and a cut of the profit to direct Sorcerer's Stone, so Newell got a little bit smaller piece of the pie. Under the advice of Alfonso Cuarón, Mike Newell fought with the studios to not allow them to make Goblet of Fire into two separate films and release it 2 months apart. The studio thought that the book was too big to put into one film, and Newell guaranteed them that he could cut out a lot of the subplots that weighed down the book a little bit and still make an enjoyable and cohesive film. The studio's not the only thing that Newell fought with for this film. He also staged a fight with one of the Weasley twins to show the cast what he wanted them to do in the scene.
Mike just came over and said, no.
Okay, who wants to fight?
And like an idiot, I was like, oh yeah, okay.
And to kind of undercut his authority and make himself look goofy because everyone kept calling him Sir, and he didn't want them to call him Sir.
But of course the wonderful thing was that I had made a complete twit of myself, and everybody felt much better for that.
Unfortunately, the fight got out of hand and Newell broke one of his ribs, leaving him in pain for the rest of production.
I remember gripping him round the waist and trying to fling him about and so forth, and cracked a couple of ribs, and so was in absolute agony from then on.
Mike also made himself look a little bit goofy by complimenting Alan Rickman. Rickman wore black contacts while playing Severus Snape, and Newell, not knowing that, went up and complimented Rickman on his unusual eye color, to which Alan popped out one of his contacts, surprising Newell. And speaking of body modifications, this is the first time that we see Ralph Fiennes as Lord Voldemort in the series, and he not only shaved his head, but he also shaved his armpits for the role. And every time we see him without a nose, that wasn't done with prosthetics or makeup, it was done with CGI because the prosthetics just didn't look as realistic. Voldemort's nose is not the only thing missing. They also didn't give him the red snake-like eyes that are very prominent in the book, and that's because Rafe guaranteed them that he could make his eyes look more insane and show more malice with his regular eyes than anything that contacts or CGI could do. Fiennes has also said that Voldemort's line,
I can touch you now,
is his favorite in all of the Harry Potter series. Speaking of lines, Victor Krum only has 2 in the entire movie, consisting of about 20 words, and even though it seems like he goes to an all-boys school with Durmstrangs, and the Beauxbatons are an all-girls school, that's actually not true. The Durmstrang school was actually founded by a woman. Also introduced in Goblet of Fire was Cedric Diggory, a role that was almost given to Henry Cavill, who auditioned for it, but it was ultimately given to Robert Pattinson, making Goblet of Fire his first feature film debut. Pattinson has stated in interviews that he would much rather go back and play Cedric Diggory, even though he was killed off in the first movie he was in, than go back and play Edward Cullin for a second time. 2 more characters introduced in this movie were Cho Chang and Rita Skeeter. There were over 3,000 girls who auditioned for the role of Cho Chang in London on February 7th, 2004, and Katie Leung didn't even go to audition. She was just downtown shopping and happened to stop in for the audition and got the role. And Icelandic audiences were given a good laugh with the introduction of Rita Skeeter, because in Icelandic, the word Skita is the offensive word for poo. There were characters that were left out of Goblet of Fire that were very prominent in either previous films or in the books. The first of 2 were the house elves Dobby and Winky, who were very prominent in the books, but were cut out of Goblet of Fire due to time. But if you pay attention around the 6-minute mark and you look closely, you can see 2 house elves riding on a llama at the Quidditch World Cup, and a lot of fans think that that was supposed to be Dobby and Winky in the original cut of the film. Also not returning was Ron's older brother Percy, who was originally supposed to have a very key part in this movie, but his actor Chris Rankin had in his contract that he was only going to do the first 3 films in either Goblet of Fire or Order of the Phoenix, and Rankin chose Order of the Phoenix, so Percy was cut. And for the first time in any Harry Potter movie, the Dursleys do not make an appearance, and it's been said a few places that the reason that they didn't is because their actors were asking for too much money, so the studio just cut them. One character that did return was Dumbledore, still played by Michael Gambon, who wore his street clothes underneath his robes so he could hide his cigarettes in his sock and smoke them whenever he got a chance. There was some downtime. And as I talk about for every Harry Potter movie, aging and time are the 2 biggest challenges to filming a Harry Potter movie. Daniel Radcliffe grew up so quickly and changed his looks so drastically between Prisoner of Azkaban and Goblet of Fire that it actually became a continuity issue. And the crew had to use a spot removing technique on the teenagers in this film because they started to get acne. It was actually the same technique that was used on the TV show Desperate Housewives to touch up those ladies. And the strict shooting schedule was great for continuity for the movies, but it wasn't so great for the actor Rupert Grint, who developed tonsillitis during Goblet of Fire and wasn't able to have his tonsils removed for 6 years until after the promotion for the Deathly Hallows Part 2, so he suffered for our entertainment for 6 years. And it's interesting to think about that because at the end of the day, all the actors on this film pretty much were just kids, and that's no more evident than in the scenes of the Yule Ball. For the Yule Ball waltz, the kids were given 3 weeks of training in order to learn how to waltz for that scene, except for Daniel Radcliffe, who was in pretty much every scene of this movie, so he didn't have the time, so he was given 4 days worth of training, and that's why when we see him dancing, you only see him from the hands up because he kept falling as he was dancing. And speaking of falling, during Hermione's She's All That scene where she was made beautiful, Emma Watson actually fell down the steps during the first take of that scene, which was pretty embarrassing for her. And while we're on the topic of the Yule Ball, the band members for the band Wyrd Sister that was at the Yule Ball were made up of band members from Pulp and Radio Head, and a Canadian band called Wyrd Sister threatened to sue for $40 million members of those bands and Warner Brothers for the use of their name, so Warner Brothers just cut out all mention of Wyrd Sister from the movie. So let's talk about the other events of the Triwizard Tournament, starting with the fighting of the dragons. So for that scene, production made a full-scale model of the dragon using parts from the basilisk from the Chamber of Secrets, and it was so realistic that it actually breathed fire. For that scene alone, it took 140 effect shots, and some of that scene was actually 100% computer generated, from the background, the dragon, to Harry himself. The scenes that seemed the most impressive to me to film were the underwater scenes because they literally did it in a giant tank with a blue screen background, and they sent divers down in between takes to give the actors oxygen. Well, the actors that were actually down there, because the ones that were unconscious were actually just full-size models, just like the petrification scenes from Chamber of Secrets. And during filming, during one of the first takes, Daniel Radcliffe accidentally motioned and gave the signal that he was drowning, causing everybody to panic and rush to his aid when he was just fine. Actors had a log of how much time they spent underwater, and Daniel Radcliffe has stated that his total time was about 41 hours and 38 minutes underwater, and that they filmed for 3 weeks.
I've heard that we average like 7 seconds of footage a day or something, like, of usable footage.
Daniel Radcliffe did have a picture taken of the cast and crew underwater that he used as his Christmas card by photoshopping red noses and antlers onto everybody in the photo, and I hope that it was worth it because Daniel Radcliffe actually got 2 ear infections while filming the underwater scenes for the Goblet of Fire. Now let's wrap up talking about the Goblet of Fire with some post-production facts and a few interesting tidbits that I found. First off, this was the first Harry Potter movie to be rated PG-13, or whatever its overseas equivalent was. And interestingly enough, Avade Kedavra is one of the only spells that J.K. Rowling took from an already existing spell. It's Aramaic, and it's kind of the precursor for Abracadabra, and it literally means let the thing be destroyed. And one cool coincidence that I found was 5 of the actors that acted in the Goblet of Fire actually played Winston Churchill at some time. Robert Hardy, who played Cornelius Fudge, played Winston Churchill 3 separate times, 3 different movies. Timothy Spall, who played Peter Pettigrew, played Winston Churchill in 2 different movies. Brendan Gleeson, Michael Gambon, and Gary Oldman, who played Moody, Dumbledore, and Gary Oldman respectively, have all played Winston Churchill 1 time. And even Miranda Richardson, who played Rita Skeeter, played Winston Churchill's wife at 1 time. But she also played Eva Braun, which was the other guy's wife, so we won't talk about her. That's all the facts I have for Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Like I said before, I'm going to change gears, do something a little bit different, and then I want to come back to the Harry Potter series. So, stick around, come back, and as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.